Hello, everybody. See if my screen is dirty here. My camera. Can you guys hear my sound? Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Okay, hello, everybody. Wow. Wild. Wild. I'll start out by saying that Sarah and Victoria will be in the chat. They may answer questions in the chat because I can't see because things happen so fast. So if you see them answering, know that that is from me. They're also my dedicated troll hunters for the live stream. So like, I don't even know what to say. It's crazy. Beyond grateful, beyond humbled. As I said in the video, I was just going to put the boat on the hard and like take a year off and go find work. And Victoria very delicately at breakfast suggested it, and I listened and thought about it. And I always try to surround myself with people who are smarter than me. I think that's a good policy in life. The trick is surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you, and also taking their advice from time to time. So I can't explain how difficult it was for me to do that. Like the day, and like Sarah and Victoria had to talk me off the ledge all the way up to like us publishing the thing, the campaign. Very difficult for me. I spent most of that first, and it went bonkers right away. It was like we reached our goal of $6,500 in less than an hour, which was like really shocking. But that whole first day, I felt so ashamed that I was like really upset the whole day. Like I felt ashamed and disappointed in myself and just how I was raised. Like we all have damage from our past. The way I was raised has also made it so that I can live a really difficult life and have little to no self-pity and just kind of push through really, really hard stuff. So there's benefits to the damage from our childhoods. I'm 50 years old, so I was raised in the 70s and 80s, and tough love and being thrown into the deep end of a pool to learn how to swim was kind of the rule of the road. So it was very, very, very difficult for me. And I'm just speechless at the support. And the comments. More than anything, the comments of what people have said, especially on the YouTube channel, on my Instagram as well. I think it's actually going to like reframe what I do for me mentally. Because so many people said that my videos helped them get through like really hard times and like their darkest hours. Like, and I mentioned this on Instagram and to my patrons. I did a live for my patrons yesterday. But I have spent the last 5 years almost entirely alone. So it's really easy to like just feel alone when you're just always by yourself. And I film and I create videos and I share my experiences with everyone. And as it just happens, they naturally fall out of line. There's real-time interaction with people on Instagram and stuff, but I'm just almost always completely alone. So to know like what an impact the videos have had on people's lives to like help people through dark times, it's it's remarkable. What an amazing time that we live in. And I think that this next year, as I get hard into everything I have to do to keep pushing and then crossing the Indian Ocean to Africa, the times of loneliness will have a different feeling, I think, you know? Yeah, it's really like that has like really stuck in my head. So many messages of people saying that. Thank you so much to everyone for watching, for commenting, for kindness. There's so much like mean-spirited stuff that happens on the internet, as we all know. There's so much doom scrolling to be had. So I always try to make videos that show my real life, but I try to give people some sort of like entertainment or document or content that lets them just like see what someone's life is like, right? So leaving as much of the doom outside as I can. I do show hardships. I do talk about when things are difficult for me mentally, physically, everything. But to know like and have confirmation that like it's affected people in that way is that may be like my greatest life achievement. And I'm like an old salty punk rocker. I'm not like if you had told younger me that my heart would swell to bursting knowing that I had like, you know, brightened people's day, I would have been like, what the hell are you talking about? So it's maybe it's a testament to getting older. Maybe it's a testament to growing as a human. Thank you. This community is amazing. There's there's nothing that stresses me out more ever, forever, than like money issues. I can like be in like a 50 knot squall with the, suffering knockdowns out in the spray, trying to get the third reef in, which is still too much sail. And that doesn't stress me out nearly as much as like laying in bed trying to figure out how in the world I'm going to make it until the next like paycheck. And that's unfortunately the way I've lived my life has been a common theme forever. I've always lived my life to where I work as much as I need to survive, but I've always put more value in trying to have as many amazing experiences as I could. So in my like 20s and 30s, that was like traveling all over the US, whether, you know, with friends in a road trip or train hopping or, you know, traveling in Europe. I used to do music, so I toured in Europe quite a bit, and that was always a way to make money so I could see different countries in Europe. Um, and I always just kind of just barely got by. I've always lived paycheck to paycheck. Um, I've never had more than $5,000 in my savings account ever in my life. I'm 50 years old. I never owned a new car. I've never owned a house. The newest car I've ever owned was a 1981 Datsun pickup, and that was in 2019. So my older brother, who has had the same job for like over 30 years, who is always like worked really hard to have like a stable life. He has a family, has children and a wife. And so he's always, you know, maintained like security, like most responsible people do. And we were both raised extremely poor. So we both came from the same household. We moved constantly. We were very poor. My mom worked as a waitress, the graveyard shift at diners. There were too many marriages that she was in for me to like comfortably list. And coming out of that, my older brother David decided he was going to have like a very sort of like structured path of like stability. And I just kind of like, I ended up being a homeless youth in Los Angeles, train hopped around, lived homeless in Texas and Albuquerque, New Mexico. You know, I just realized that I could get by with less. And so that was the sort of route that I took. But David, I think it was in New Zealand when my engine had to be rebuilt the first time. And I was like, I don't know how in the world I'm going to pull this off. David, yeah, he said to me, he was like, you have an amazing talent for living on the brink of financial destruction at any given moment. And I laughed so hard. It was like the funniest thing anyone had ever said. So it's interesting that we both came from this sort of like extremely poor upbringing and we both took really different paths. Neither one being right, neither one being wrong, just different paths. So that being said, right before Victoria got to Reebok, just before Christmas, she arrived on, I think on the 22nd. The refit at Reebok had like run me completely dry. So I had $50 in my bank account, which is the lowest I've had in my bank account since like 2010. $50 in my bank account, $14 in my savings account. I spent $6,000 on the refit and still left without a working engine, with no working dinghy and a rudder that had to be rebuilt. So she, right before she showed up, thank God she's super chill and loves me. I had like $50 in my account. I was just like so stressed. And Victoria's just the most chill and just kind of shrugs and rolls with the punches. And we got everything sorted out and made it happen. And so now to have like this outpouring of support from the community, which is completely mind-blowing. It's going to give me the ability to not stress about the thing that destroys me the most internally, which is like, how am I going to pull this off? You know, this life is like hard enough without constantly being worried about how you're going to afford some more ramen, or worse, like how are you going to keep up a yacht that's 60 years old. And I intentionally keep Triteia very simple because the more you have, the more breaks. Also, my heroes, they all sailed with very little. So that's kind of the baseline that I set sort of my standards to. So this like remarkable support, which I'll never be able to like thank people in the way that I want to, because I don't even know how. But that's going to allow me to push on the circumnavigation and then just worry about the boat, the dangers of what lay ahead, doing something completely mad, like sailing around the world on a 30-foot boat that's 60 years old, 61 years old. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And for everyone who is as broke as I have been my whole life, that expressed that they wanted to contribute and, you know, financially, and they couldn't, watching the videos is contributing. You know, that's like part of my paycheck. And like, I make less than, for the last 6 months, I make less than $3,000 a month between my Patreon and YouTube ad revenue. So, which I maintain, like, I don't ever, on a regular basis, I don't ever get in the red. Like, I'm always fine until really big things happen. And then once you stumble, it's very difficult to keep your head above water with such a sort of like shoestring budget like I live on. So now I have a war chest that will allow me to like deal with like huge obstacles as they come up. So the plans with the support. I'm not buying a different boat. Triteia is my boat. I'm going to complete the circumnavigation on this boat as long as she's floating. That will never change. I am, as soon as the campaign hit 20,000, which was in like a few hours or something crazy like that, I can't remember how long, I called Victoria and I was like, we need to start looking at a diesel inboard. So to relieve everyone's worry about that, we've started trying to get quotes for a Beta Marine Beta 20. It will be a bit of a challenge to install because I have a Yanmar 2 GM20F, so there's some modifications that have to happen. The bigger challenge is, can we find one while I'm racing the clock of the season, the sailing season? So the time thing, the season is the big challenge. So we have we're trying to find out if we can, what it would take to get one here in Phuket, which would be the easiest solution. But we're also getting a quote from Beta Marine Malaysia. And if if they can get us one quicker than Phuket can, then I'll have to sell back to Langkawi, which is duty free. So that's good. And get it there. But so with the funds, new Beta Marine Beta 20 is in the works. That's going to happen. A new high-filled ultralight dinghy is going to happen. That's the night the campaign was going off. I had the funniest moment because my questionable dinghy, which if you just watch YouTube and you don't watch my Instagram account, you won't know about this questionable dinghy. But I bought like a $90 high field in Langkawi that like Victoria said it does the two things it's supposed to do badly. It lets the air out and lets all the water in. So really sketchy dinghy. Anyway, I was like ashore that day and the tube almost completely popped and let all the air out. And I like hurried back with the outboard full throttle, got back to the boat before it sort of like sunk the dinghy. And then I took everything out, hauled it up on deck to like try to patch it with Sikaflex. But the night that I went to, and then I have like a little inflatable kayak that I've had on board as like the emergency transportation since I left LA. I aired it up and rode ashore so I could get dinner that night and go for a walk. I was so overwhelmed by everything that night. I'm coming back and it's like the campaign was going bonkers, tons of amazing support. And then I'm like rowing back into like 9 knots of wind in an inflatable kayak that even the floor of it was deflating. And it took me 30 minutes to row against the chop in this like kind of deflating and I was laughing so hard. I was like, this is hilarious that like this is taking place at the same time that like, it was so funny to me. But so it'll be nice to have like a reliable dinghy that I don't have to worry about. So high-filled ultralight dinghy, 2.4 meter, I think is the size that fits. I'm also going to buy a life raft that's not expired. My life raft has been expired since like I left LA, and my buddy Keel Dragger, he gave me that life raft before I left, and you should check out his YouTube channel if you don't know it. I remember when he gave it to me in LA. He was like, "Here you go," and I was like, "Oh my god, thanks so much. You don't want any money?" And he's like, "No, I don't have any use for 2 expired life rafts." So I've had an expired life raft since I left. So, but they say that usually they're fine. I'm gonna buy a new life raft. I'm gonna buy a fancy first aid kit, a lot of safety stuff. I'm not doing any sort of wild bells and whistles. I might, if I can work it out timing wise, I might get radar installed here. I haven't had working radar since Hawaii, and it'd be nice to get like a chart plotter that has radar overlay, because after that whole thing with Navionics, the charts disappearing, I'm so spooked by Navionics. It'd be nice to have like a dedicated chart plotter with radar, especially because South Africa and Namibia have like a lot of fog, and that's the main reason you want radar, is for fog. So I might get that installed here, but I have to see what's possible, what's available, and all that sort of stuff. I was going to go to Krabi, which is a nearby province. They were gonna, a marina there had agreed to sponsor the haul out, but now with the success of the campaign, it makes more sense for me just to haul out here in Phuket. So I'll have to pay for the haul out, which is $700 for a month, but it saves me so much time because there are no chandleries there. There's no place to get marine ply, and I have to get right into the rudder build. So in the next, I think there's wind coming on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I'm going to be using that wind, because I'm still just have this little outboard on the transom that doesn't really work very well. I'm going to be using that wind to get up 20 miles north to get up to Apo Marina, I think is where I'm going to haul out. I've gotten a quote from them and been in touch with them. So otherwise I'd have to try to beat head to wind for 40 miles to Krabi. But the main thing is like time is money, right? So if I'm there, they don't have any materials, they don't have any parts or anything. And I, as is with boats, you get into a project, you find out you're out of, I ran out of epoxy, or I ran out of whatever. You end up spending like 2 days having to come back here to resupply. So it makes more sense just to pay for the haul out, to do it here, to make it really efficient. So that's the plan. I'm going to head up. I already have all the fiberglass cloth and all the resin and stuff to start the rudder build. So this week I'm going to head up, haul out, and start the rudder build. I would guess once I have all the stuff, I think I can build the rudder in like 2 weeks with like kickoff times and everything. When me and Victoria stopped by Raleigh Tasker to meet up with Sven, who's the owner of Raleigh Tasker and CEO, he gave us a tour. We visited with him, and I asked him if he knew anyone, like if he had any suggestions for like good stainless fabricators in Phuket, because I've like reached out to 4 different people to just get basic quotes, and like no one's gotten back to me for a quote. I'm so stressed. That's like a challenge in Southeast Asia, is like you kind of get held captive by fabricators, because I don't know if they're like, they have so much work that they don't have to really like communicate, or they don't want to work. I don't know what the deal is, but I saw it happen to a bunch of people in Langkawi, and I've seen it now here firsthand in Phuket. And so we asked Sven, and Sven was like, we're the best stainless fabricators in all of Phuket. And he was like, we're going to handle the parts. So, and they're one of my sponsors. So they're getting me all new fancy sails and everything that was already predetermined. But he was like, no, we're going to take care of that. So then he like took me down and introduced me to the guy that does all the metal fabrication for them. They even build masts in-house. They do crazy stuff. So Sven was like, no, we're going to take care of that. So you don't have to worry about that. So that's awesome. Really awesome. Love Raleigh Tasker. There's a really cool tour video that I filmed that's going to be coming out on YouTube eventually. So absolutely love them. Fantastic company, amazing sales, remarkable. So they're going to be doing the parts, the stainless parts I need for the rudder, and which will be better built than my temporary fix, but my temporary fix would have been perfectly fine. Everybody's giving me a hard time. So, what else? So yeah, here's the plan. Head up there, haul out, get right to work on the rudder, have them start doing the fabrication on the stainless stuff. At the same time, Victoria's trying to chase down this Beta 20. If we can get it in Phuket, then I'll install it while it's at the yard. I might bring in one of my friends, either from the States or from England, to help me with the engine swap out, because I have to like build a new engine footing and all that stuff. So 2 different of my boys who I work very well with and I love, and they're brilliant fabricators. I'm seeing if either one of them are available and interested in coming out to try to bring in reinforcements. So that's the plan. If we can't get a Beta Marine here in a timely manner, then once I get the rudder done and everything, get the boat back in the water, then I'll sail to Langkawi if we can get one there, and I'll do the engine install in Langkawi, which in some ways is better because it would be cheaper because it's duty free in Langkawi. So, yeah, so that's where we're at on that front. Let me think if I forgot anything. And now I'm blanking. I glanced. I haven't really been staring at the chat because it just distracts me and I can't answer things while I'm trying to deliver my prearranged know what I need to talk about. A number of people were telling me to buy a windlass. I did buy a windlass, a used windlass during the refit, and there's a video coming out about that. So Triteia has an electric windlass installed. Me and Victoria finished the install somewhere in Thailand. I don't remember where we were when we finished the install, but the windlass is installed. And when we got to the PP Islands, we had to drop the anchor in really deep water, and I put out 200 feet of chain. And let me tell you, I did not break a sweat stepping on that button on the foredeck when that 200 feet of chain came up and the 45-pound anchor. So that was a pretty remarkable moment for me. But all that, there's a video. I filmed all that stuff. So that's coming out at some point. What else? I saw other people mention a water maker. I was actually just cold emailed by a water maker company, and I forget, Sarah, if you remember the water maker company, will you put it in the chat right now? They just contacted and want to send a water maker, so we're in talks with that to see what that looks like and if that's possible. Yeah, so I guess I can pop over to the chat now. Whew, boy, intense. Thanks everybody for showing up. Let's see how many. We got 735 people. Hi, everyone. And I don't think I said, I'm in Phuket, Chalong Bay. What's the word? Chalong? I'm probably saying it wrong, but it sounds like a Wu-Tang song to me. Okay, let me see here. Okay, let's see here. Got any? Let me see. Wow, it's going fast here. Let me try to see. Oh, Sarah just commented, pure ocean marine water maker. They look pretty nice. There's one that's small enough, modular system. I think I could fit it, but it's going to be really difficult to fit. Well, I was like, oh, it'll be easy. I can put it in the engine bay because I thought I was pulling the engine out, but now that changed. Someone said, what's the latest you can leave for the Indian Ocean crossing? If I'm leaving from Phuket, I need to leave before April. So there's that. Yos from Sailing Nanji, we WhatsApp kind of regular, and he said, I asked him yesterday when they left. They left from Sumatra, I think. He said they left in June, but they skipped the Maldives and had to take a more southern route because his puppy was on board. So at least that gave me a little bit of like, okay, well, I'll miss the Maldives, unfortunately, and stuff, but there is a bit of leeway if I have to like run back down to Langkawi and then kind of sail down towards Sumatra. I'm definitely not going back to Indonesia, but if I have to kind of go that way and catch the trades down there and get out of the gnarly monsoon that's going to be happening at that time up here. So that's an option at least. So what else? So yeah, I guess I could talk about my plans, what I want to do leaving here. I would like to go from here to the Maldives, do the Maldives for like a month, and then down to Chagos, do Chagos for like 2 weeks. It's very expensive there. And then Chagos to Seychelles, be in Seychelles for about a month, and then Seychelles to Madagascar, hopefully be in Madagascar a few months, and then Madagascar to South Africa. I need to be in South Africa, at least Richards Bay, by like the 1st of October for the seasons. And then I still have like a 900-mile passage down, and it's deadly serious bit of water on that South African coast. I was reading in one of my cruising guides, actually this cool cruising guide. Captain Fatty Goodlander gave me this, and Carolyn gave me this when I was in Singapore, and I met them and visited with them. So in here, it was talking about the waves on the South African coast. When a low shows up and hits that Agulhas current, that the waves can get up to 65 feet tall. So you still have to do these hops. The worst stretch of that coast, the most difficult stretch, rather, time-wise, is between Durban and East London is like 250 miles or something like that, 225. And so that's the one you really need to like, I guess like you need a 3-day safe forecast doing any passage, because it's like super dangerous. And that current runs southbound at like 3 to 4 knots, sometimes 5 knots, like a few miles offshore. So very spooky, deadly serious. So let me see if there's any more questions. Someone said twice the length of Triteia. Ooh, spooky thought. Someone asked what after South Africa. Right now, I think South Africa, Namibia, because I want to go to the Skeleton Coast, and then St. Helena, Ascension Island, and Brazil, and then I'll decide the route after that. At that point, that's not until what year is this? That's next year's program. Someone said, if you could do it all again, where would you start? If I could do it again, I would have gone down to Mexico and sail from Mexico to the Marquesas and then through French Poly and done the same route, but I would have bypassed the Hawaii, because the Hawaii passage for sailing from Hawaii to French Polynesia was very difficult. The first 9 days were like the worst 9 days of my life. So brutal because you're beating into the trade winds. I think sailing down to Mexico, cruising Mexico, and then to the Marquesas, that's like because I didn't get to see the Marquesas because there was no way I could beat that high. Someone said, "Are you going to document the engine swap?" Oh yeah, everything will be filmed. I think that I like running. I'm gonna have to switch to like 2 videos a week for a couple months because I have too much content. So I think the rudder build, no matter how long it takes me, will be 1 episode, and then the engine, everything, pulling, building out the new one, fitting the new one, that'll be 1 episode. And they might be long; they might be an hour long, but those are going to be just 2 episodes standalone. Someone said going Yanmar. No, Beta 20 is the engine I will go with. All mechanical. Someone said, any need for a new fuel tank? Yeah, actually, I was thinking that this morning. It's funny you should ask. I think I might just get a poly tank that fits. Won't even make it that much bigger, but it would be nice to get rid of my aluminum tank. What else? Someone said, consider nanny diesels. I never heard of those. So a couple people have mentioned those recently, but I'll look into them if we can't get a beta. But I don't know anything about those. And I know a ton of people that have betas that love them. But I think those nannies are also Kubota base, but I'm not sure. Someone asked if I'm getting new rigging. I don't need new rigging. My rigging was brand new in 2021, actually. Someone said, didn't I go to Nuka Hiva, though? No, the surfing tournament you're thinking about was in Tahiti. Let's see here. Let's see here. Someone said, what other YouTubers do you watch and what serious lessons have you learned? I watched tons of YouTube when I was like living on land. I watched everyone I could watch. I don't really watch any YouTube stuff now. I watch like historical stuff on YouTube, but I don't watch any kind of cruising stuff. And it's funny because like most of the people out cruising don't watch YouTube either. So I'll watch YouTube stuff if I'm researching places I'm going. The channels I used to really love free range sailing, but they quit sailing. I think they're doing like farm stuff now. I really love their channel because it was the one closest to what I was interested in doing. I like Sailing Nanji. I watch them a lot. Sailing out Florence, they're like the real deal and like really amazing sailors. Sam and Holly, but they're like good friends of mine. So, what else? You guys got any questions in the live chat? Sarah, will you want to chime in if there's anything I missed that can everybody give Victoria and Sarah some love in the chat right now for convincing me to move forward with that? Like Victoria broached the subject at breakfast. We got back to the boat, had a serious conversation about it, and then called Sarah and we had like a conversation with Sarah about it. Sarah was like, also 100% behind it and was trying to figure out how to convince me to do it also. And then the next morning I did a live stream with my patrons and asked their advice, and they were all 100% behind it. So that's when we decided to go ahead and move forward. And then it was about probably a week and a half or 2 weeks before we actually launched the campaign. What else? Oh, hi, Samantha. Samantha's on here. Someone said, how long are you going to sail for? My answer is the same as the parties. They coined the term, coined the phrase, as long as it's fun. Which is actually, it hasn't been fun for like a year now. I'm still sailing, but yeah. Someone said, just wondering who's Sarah. Sarah we've been friends for more than 20 years. She's been like the top person on my shore team since I left. Yeah, there's many videos like Sarah came to Hawaii twice. There's episodes with Sarah in Hawaii. There's episodes with Sarah visiting New Zealand. So she's sort of been like had my back since day one and long before day one. What else? Any more questions? Let's see, 734 people. Man, that's awesome. Someone said, well, you do something with your hull. I don't know what you mean. There's nothing wrong with my hull. I have 0 blisters. 1965, solid hand-laid fiberglass, no core, full keel, encapsulated keel for the win. Someone said, what is drawing you still to the sea versus on land trying that route? Oh, are you wondering if you'll go back to landside that your channel would not exist? Still watch James' Adventures. There's nothing I love more than sailing. One of the biggest problems with land is there are humans on land. What's cool about sailing is like you have to really work. You can go to places that you can only reach by boat. So that weeds out a lot of people who aren't willing to like go the extra mile and like really push. And I guess to some extent you can do that in like the Alps and stuff like that, but I'd much rather like quietly sail than carry giant heavy packs up a mountain. The sea is peaceful. You get to sleep and it feels like you're being rocked in a cradle every night. Sometimes it's gnarly with weather. Sometimes it's challenging with bureaucracies, but getting to travel the world in this ancient form, Andy Schell says it's travel at a human pace. So I've sailed like over 19,000 miles at this point with Triteia at about 5 miles an hour. So to be forcibly slowed down, to use the elements for your primary mode of transportation, propulsion, it's that romance that you just don't get by being in a car and putting petrol in it and driving and having, park rangers or police harass you for sleeping in your vehicle on the side of the road or down a country stretch or something. You're left to your own devices. You have to be self-sufficient. You have to minimize your life. I've lived for the last 5 years, and my entire cabin sole is 24 inches by 72 inches. So to like have to streamline your life and really get rid of like creature comforts in exchange for getting to wake up to like gorgeous sunrises surrounded by remarkable islands, get to see fish swimming around. Yesterday there was a big shark jumping out of the water. So for me, that's the draw. Is like it's like traveling back in time, and that's always been the appeal for me for ocean sailing, world cruising by sailboat. Someone said, you're not terrified of sharks when dying off the boat. I've swam with sharks all over the world. Sharks don't eat people, they taste us. And when they taste us, it's unfortunate for us, but they don't eat people. So Sharks, if you know how to interact with sharks and you don't jump into murky water and you don't swim at sunrise or sunset in places that are heavy with sharks, because they're only gonna attack you if they think you're prey. Like they have zero interest in other predators. So sharks, if you know how to interact with them and you don't present yourself as prey, you'll have no problem with sharks. It's when people act like prey, whether knowingly or not knowingly, that's when problems happen. Crocodiles, on the other hand, hard pass on crocodiles. Also, irukandji, terrified of irukandji, and box jellies. There's a lot of box jellies in Langkawi this season. That is super scary. What else? Oh, this thing is moving so quick. I apologize. Let me see here. Someone said, "How are you feeling about the Indian Ocean crossing?" Oh, that's Killdragger. What up, partner? I was just mentioning you earlier. I'm feeling thoughtful about it. I've done so much research on it. I know its reputation. I know what's in store. And I think I would be really nervous about the Indian Ocean if I hadn't sailed to New Zealand and if I hadn't sailed all the way down to the Roaring Forties and kind of got my ass kicked in Cook Strait several times. But the passage to New Zealand was like a taste of what is possible with the Indian Ocean. So Triteia is super tough and the boat will be ready. So yeah, I'm feeling not cocky about it. Cautiously optimistic, I guess, is how I feel about it. Yeah. Someone said, "Am I worried about pirates?" No, I'm not worried about pirates because I'm not going anywhere near Somalia. Someone said, "What advice do you give to a novice sailor to get where you are now?" Go sailing on every single boat you can possibly go sailing on. Ask a billion questions, sit back, watch how people sail their boat, see how they do things. You might find that they don't know what they're doing either. You might find that they're absolutely brilliant, but go sailing on every boat you can go sailing on, whether it's a day sail, whether it's a local beer can racing team, volunteer to be free crew on yacht deliveries, to get ocean sailing experience. Get on every single boat you can. And like, even still, like when I travel to, pretty much any city that I travel to that has water, I get invited to go sailing with people who watch the channel, and I take them up on it if it's possible at all. I love to go sailing on other people's boats. And I always just kind of sit back and watch and like try to see how they have things set up, see what they do. I learn things from people that have far less experience than me. I learn things from people who have way more experience than me. The key is to like pay attention, ask a bunch of questions, see how the boat moves, understand different ways to do things. That's my best advice. Is like, I am so against this like obnoxious YouTube content creator trend of being like, I have no idea what I'm doing, so I'm just gonna push off in the ocean. Let's see how it goes. There's like zero excuse for that in this day and age. Between the internet, the only people that do that are people that are lazy. Like, you can get a boat and not know and find your way onto boats. I know because I didn't have a boat and I had no money and I couldn't afford the ASA, so I couldn't even take that. And I found my way onto boats, volunteering, asking to get on boats, walking the docks. There's ways to get experience, and that's the best thing. Go sailing as much as possible. That's my advice to young sailors. Um, Occasional villain 7676 said, "Don't like water. I'm a land lover. I like motorcycles. That's my thing. I love this channel. I love your spirit. Thank you much. I rode motorcycles for many, many years, and I had a 1969 Honda CB 160 I was the second owner, all original, beautiful motorcycle, and then I had a Honda CB 404F that was all I customized and made it into a cafe racer. It was, yeah, I love motorcycles. I was also hit on the freeway. Spent a year, 6 months with a cane and rebuilding my motorcycle while I did because I'm a sucker for punishment. What else? You guys got any more questions? Someone said, "Have you know anyone that had alien encounters in the water?" I think jellyfish are aliens. I just stare at those things. I'm like, how in the world are you a creature that is alive? You can see through them. They can kill you sometimes. Crazy. I gotta use the head just a sec. Okay, I'm back. Someone said, "Thoughts on ways to heat boat interiors, forced air diesel heaters." And you don't need to buy the fancy kind. I know tons of people that have the cheap Chinese ones and they've worked perfect for years. Forced air diesel heater. Dry air, uses diesel, which you probably already have on the boat. Very, very efficient. Yes, I did just wash my hands. What are you talking about, bro? Someone said, "Are you considering the Strait of Magellan and Patagonia instead of the canal?" Yes, I have. I'm considering all options past Africa. Someone said, "Are you going to get a tattoo when you complete the circumnavigation?" Oh, yeah. I'll get some kind of little memento. I don't have a ton of room left. Someone said, "Why 20 horsepower over 16 horsepower?" Referring to the Beta 20. Because the Beta 20, it's better to have extra horsepower that you don't need for when things are really gnarly. And you can have a bigger alternator on the Beta 20, which is always good. Someone said, "How many people have circumnavigated?" I'm not sure the answer to that, but I couldn't even find. What I'm curious is, like, I don't know how many people have circumnavigated in small boats, because lots of people have circumnavigated if you think about the Cape Horners and all that stuff. But small boats, like boats 30 feet or under, I think it's a pretty small statistic. Someone said, "Saw your boat and parlays video." Yeah, Colin and Jamie are super nice. Me and Colin had messaged back and forth when we were in New Zealand, he was asking me about advice heading to the South Island before he did his like circumnavigation of New Zealand. But then I had left before he got down there. I had sailed to Australia before he got to the South Island. So it was cool to finally meet Colin in person. And then his buddy Jamie, super nice dudes, just real down to earth, great people. Someone said, what is your battery bank? There's a whole big battery video coming up into not tomorrow, but the next Monday. Dakota Lithium is my battery sponsor, and there's a whole video of the new batteries coming up. What else? How we doing? Everybody still having fun here? 55 minutes in. Still have my voice. Someone said, are you considering writing a book? I've written several books. I have 3 sailing books that I've written. I have a Hawaii Adventures book that's going to come out this year. I am in the sort of negotiating stage with a very, very, very big publisher who I don't want to name yet until the contract is done for writing a book. They reached out to me about writing for them. So we'll see how that plays out. But yes, I'll for sure be doing a big book about the circumnavigation and a separate book about the Hawaii situation. Someone said, do I live on the boat? Yeah, I've lived aboard since February of 2021. Someone said, do you find it hard being sober all the time? I know you said you're sober forever. Just curious. I've always been sober. And that has never appealed to me. So it's not difficult. Like, I'm not in the program. I'm not like a recovering addict or anything. So it just doesn't. It's never been of interest to me at all. So no, it's not difficult. And it's a lot cheaper. Someone said, what is your favorite punk band and why is it Fugazi? Probably favorite punk band, probably Misfits. Kind of hard to beat the Misfits, you know? Someone said, more people have climbed Everest than have circumnavigated. There's like 10,000 people a year that do Everest. But how many people climbed Everest and carried their own stuff? That's the real question. What else? People are just popping in and asking what the plans are. So I'll do a little refresh. The plan now is to buy a Beta 20 diesel inboard engine and fit it to the boat and still push off this season. So I'm still planning to rebuild the rudder, which is going to start this week actually. And I'm going to buy a new life raft and a bunch of other safety sort of stuff and get a new high field dinghy, which I'm very excited about. Someone said, hello, James from China. Any plans of coming to China? No, that's not on my route. That's the other way. I would love to visit China someday by land, but I'm not sure how cruiser friendly it is. But I love seeing different cultures and historic places. So I'd like to see everywhere in the world at some point. Someone said, where's Waldo? I mean, James. Phuket, Thailand. Someone said, how many other 30-footers are you seeing out there? I see exactly 0. The only other small boat that I've come across was Holly, and she's on a 20, I think her boat's 28 foot, 27, 28 foot. I have not seen any other long distance sail. And there are people out there doing it. I just haven't come across them. What else? Someone said, James, could you describe a high fill dinghy for us landlubbers? It's just an inflatable dinghy, but it has like an aluminum bottom, which is really nice for like being around coral and rocks and stuff like that. It's ultra light, so it's really light. Freakishly, this like questionable dinghy I have is an ultralight, and it's shocking how light it is, even with the metal floor. But I'm getting Hypalon versus PVC because PVC only lasts 3 to 4 years, and the sun makes the glue disintegrate so that you can just peel the seams apart, which is what happened to me in Indonesia. I haven't had a safe and reliable dinghy since Komodo, when I was in Komodo in Indonesia in like, I don't know, October of last year, maybe. Someone said, what do you consider to be the minimum size of boat to do as you're doing? It all depends on this, how good of a sailor you are, how tough you are, and what your percentage of self-pity is. The parties like sailed like a 20. I think they had a 24-foot boat was their first boat. Holly Martin's parents, Dave and Jaja Martin, circumnavigated in a Cal 25 with 2 children, had the children en route. So the size of the boat, the make of the boat is important. You can't just go out in any little boat. You need to have a proper blue water boat if you want to be successful. But the size of the boat can vary wildly depending. But the main thing is like sailing in the correct places at the correct time of year for that place, and how good of a sailor you are and how tough you are, really. Someone said, what's the best site for information on customs and immigration for sailors? Well, until very recently, it was noonsite.com, but they have been down for like a month and a half, which has even been difficult for me because I realize how much I rely on them. And if they ever get back online, I might go and copy every single bit of clearing info from their site and just put it in a PDF to have on offline because, but No Foreign Land, you can go to a lot of places and click on No Foreign Land. There'll be, if you go to a country you're interested in, there'll be like a little black badge with like, looks like a police officer's hat. If you click that, a lot of times people have put in all the info about clearing in, maybe the cost, the order of which offices to visit. So No Foreign Land is like really up to date and like accurate, but I don't know what kind of mass coverage they have for the whole world yet because it's crowdsourced information. But I found it to be the best resource in cruising that exists currently. What else? So what's your favorite port or anchorage this far? Ooh, that's tricky. Favorite anchorage on Triteia? I don't know how to pick one. Some standouts are Kaneohe Bay on Oahu, the sandbar. So cool. Really neat. Morea landscape was out of this world. Stunningly beautiful. I had a nice visit with some other sailors there. Bangamumu in New Zealand, I liked a lot, and everything in the Marlborough Sounds. New Zealand is by far the best cruising ground I've ever visited. Anchoring in downtown Brisbane past the Story Bridge was so cool. Like anchoring in a little river and there's just skyscrapers towering above you. It was such a neat experience. And I like Brisbane a lot. Really cool city. Maggie Island or Magnetic Island in Australia, and Lizard Island in Australia. Really, really love those spots. There was like this little anchorage at the end of the Kumai River in Borneo, which wasn't remarkable visual. Not much to write home about. You wouldn't want to swim there because there's crocodiles. But it was so peaceful and protected, and like everything had been so brutal that it's like high up for me as far as memories go. But again, as an anchorage, like if I had just gone there and had no other experience of anything else, like if it hadn't been challenging to get there, it wouldn't stand out. But as it is, it's like really, I'm like, I love that place. It feels like a safe place. Me and Victoria anchored to this place called the Fjords in Langkawi for Christmas. There's footage of it in a video coming out soon. That place was amazing. Really, and we were the only people there, surrounded by gorgeous jungle cliffs. And we were completely alone there for Christmas. Really cool. And where else? Me and Victoria spent a few days at Koh Mook, which is a really nice experience here in Thailand. So, yeah, those are, I can't pick one. So difficult. Someone said, have you run into any other YouTubers? Yeah, I originally met Holly in Fiji. And then I met Colin recently at Reebok, and I saw Sam, but me and Sam knew each other back from LA. But I met a bunch of YouTubers in Annapolis, but yeah. Oh yeah, Victoria said, Koh Mook forever, fried fish and vipers. We had a viper fall out of the sky right next to her, land on the thing with a mouse in its mouth. It was so crazy. It like fell out of the rafters or something. We were at this outdoor restaurant. It was insane. Pretty big viper. What else? Sarah, am I missing anything? Thanks again to everybody who watches. And if you didn't see the first part of this video, beyond grateful for the support. Speechless, completely humbled, had a hard cry the day of. So grateful for this community. Someone said, what is your favorite book? Maybe Seawolf or Moby Dick, because they're both so existential. My favorite sea story is, I say this like every live stream when people ask me this question, but at least I'm consistent. Men Against the Sea. This book stresses me out so hard. I've read it like 4 times and it still stresses me out. Someone said, are you going to do more yarns? Yeah, I've met a few people I would like to have interviewed recently. The problem is like having too much content. I have to be very careful because when I was in New Zealand, I ended up producing too much content and my channel suffered from it. People stopped watching and my paycheck got really thin. So I realized like I was kind of oversaturating. I love the yarn series. What I might do with the yarns thing is I might start doing interviews for another podcast. I might talk to Andy about doing interviews, the same style interviews, but for On the Wind. Andy Shell's like a dear friend of mine. Love that dude to death. So, and he has different people host on his podcast. So I might do that because I really enjoy interviewing people, but it's just a matter of like the workload for me, even keeping up with my regular episodes, because I do everything. I film everything. I edit everything. You know, I do the boat work. I sail the boat. I do all the admin online and all the socials. So finding time to do to edit the interviews and then actually distribute them and promote them, it's just kind of too much for me. But I love interviewing people, so it'd be cool to find a home doing that on another podcast. So maybe I'll hit up Andy about that. What else? Someone said, so videos only once a week still. I'm going to be doing a couple of Friday videos for the next month to try to, because I don't want the timeline to be pushed too far out. It's just always tricky. So, but again, I can't, if I oversaturate my channel, the channel suffers from it. Someone said, what do you use for editing your videos? I use Final Cut Pro. What else? People are mentioning starting another channel for yarns or just doing, you know, that sort of thing. It's still double the work for me. And I'm already like stretched really thin. So someone said, do you have experience video editing before YouTube? Yeah, I worked in porno. I'm not even kidding. I was a porno editor for many years, and that's how I learned how to edit. What else? Any more questions? Any more? People are dying. Someone said, would you entertain crew? My boat's too small for crew. So unfortunately, that's not in the future on Triteia. There are 1 million questions. Oh man. All I'll say about working in the porno industry is the doorknobs are always slippery. Someone said, are you thought about making a video about your editing process to help people who want to start? Years ago, I made a video telling people how to start a YouTube channel, but there's so many good videos of people teaching people how to video edit that I wouldn't be able to do as good of a job on that as people who are making those videos on YouTube. And I try to not make videos and fill the internet with more noise. If there's already like high quality videos of a subject, then I try to avoid making a video about that subject. Someone said, is that book behind you Into Thin Air or Into the Wild? Oh, this is a good segue. Amazing book. One of my favorite books that I read this year. Into the Ice. Fantastic book. I learned a ton in this book. Mark's a great dude. His boat is currently on the hard into Tahiti, and he's going to get back to sailing next season. I think he's currently doing like mountaineering stuff in Japan in the snow. So Mark's a great dude. Sent me a copy of his book. Check it out. Really good book. Someone said, would you captain a charter for your patrons? There are plans for a very similar thing that I can't talk about at this moment, but stay tuned. What is your final destination plan? That sounds threatening. What's your want on your reading list? Here, I'll show you what I'm reading just a second. Currently. All right, here we go. This is what I'm currently reading. While I've been reading, I showed you that other cruising guide. Fatty Goodliner gave me this one too, Cape the Caribbean. So lots of cruising guide stuff, trying to research. I'm reading Come Aboard, Eric Hiscock. Try to read any of my books that I have where they're crossing oceans that I'm preparing to cross. So I'm reading all the passages in this book of them crossing the Indian Ocean at the moment. I picked this book up in Reebok at the free shelf. This is pretty cool. It's a thick book, but this is about the creation of the Panama Canal. So this book's pretty interesting, but it's pretty thick. So it's going to take me a minute. And then last night I was reading this book, again, about places I'm heading. I try to research, like find the chapters that talk about places I'm going to try to learn anything. So I was reading the chapters in this last night about him cruising down the African coast. But what's crazy, I've had this book a long time, but what's crazy is in this book, he got to see Perilous Jack, the famous dolphin in the Marlborough Sounds that used to guide ships in. I've never read a firsthand account of people seeing it other than just like things on the internet. And I was like, I just stumbled on the chapter last night. I was like, whoa. So I read that last night at dinner. But this dude circumnavigated basically in like a canoe, which is crazy. But that's what I'm reading right now. But I have tons of stuff lined up for after that too. Someone said, is Into the Ice available as an audiobook? Oh, Into the Ice is available as an audiobook. Oh, awesome. What else? Come to see the Salish Sea. I've sailed in the Salish Sea, actually. Someone said, where are you laying over in South Africa for the next season? If I can get a place at Cape Town, then that would be cool. If I can get a slip. If I can't, then probably, I think it's called Hout Bay. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that place looks interesting. I know it's kind of far removed, but Sailing Yacht Florence stayed there and they seem to have a really nice time when they stayed there. But I would like to be in Cape Town. I think it'd be neat, you know? So we'll see. That's the goals. I want to stop at Richards Bay for a couple weeks because I want to go do some safaris from Richards Bay when I first get to South Africa, but I would like to like stop for the season for between basically like November to January in Cape Town area. Let me put in a thing just a second. Try to stop the sunburst a little bit. Someone said, how did the hull paint up over Christmas cruising? The paint's fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, it's like 2-part paint that like took me 10 hours to sand just the primer. I think it's pretty durable. Someone said, what went wrong on your rudder failure and how did you fix it in Hawaii? I have tons of videos on my YouTube channel that go over all that stuff in detail. The rudder failure, I believe, happened. I think I hit a submerged shipping container, but I'm not sure. Must be midday where you're at. It's 8:20 in the morning here in Phuket, Thailand. Someone said, better sailing alone or with someone. What do you think? I love solo ocean sailing. I love it. I love it. It's amazing. I've never done real ocean sailing with a romantic partner, so I can't speak to that. When I was dating Rhonda, we did the passage from Thursday Island to Indonesia, but you were never more than 200 miles from land, so I don't really even consider that an ocean passage. It was just more of like a passage. So I've never done like proper open ocean sailing with a partner. So I've never done double-handed sailing in that capacity on the ocean, so I can't speak to that. But I think cruising with someone you love is far better than coastal cruising by yourself. That's always been my stance on the whole thing. So like I love the open ocean sailing stuff solo, but when you get to a place like Fiji, which is really remarkable, or French Polynesia, and you don't have anyone to turn to be like, can you believe how stunningly beautiful this is? It could, and it is still amazing by yourself, but it could be better if you have someone you love that you to spend time with, to share that experience with. I find that's a better experience. But I'm happy to see as much as I can. I don't know where this starburst is coming from. See if I can just turn it. I don't know. There we go. Look at that science. Someone said, not seeing a link to donate yet. Sarah, if you could repost that GoFundMe, or Victoria, I know you guys have posted it, but if y'all could, that'd be great. Someone said, wouldn't be entertaining enough, but can you go further into detail about the current situation and how it is you suffer from it? If you could clarify that question, I'll try to answer it, but I'm not sure what you mean. Someone said, what sort of motor will you buy? A Beta Marine 20 horsepower. Would you ever want a bigger boat? I'm completing the circumnavigation on Triteia because she is perfect and I love her. I also don't I don't believe in like giving up when things have some trouble. If I believed in that, people would have given up on me a long time ago if everybody thought that way. So I try to stick it out. What up, Andy? My boy Sailing Soleil is here. Says, are there a lot of places that you can't take dogs? Pretty much any island nation won't let you bring dogs. Very, very difficult to travel with pets, especially dogs. I see quite a few people traveling with cats because they stay on the boats, but you're really restricted as to what you can see in the world if you have a dog on board. At least in the Pacific. I can't speak anything about the Atlantic or the Caribbean. I don't know anything about that. I haven't been there. But in the Pacific, they're very, very do not want dogs coming because they could wipe out the local wildlife if they bring diseases. My boys Killdragger and Sailing Soleil are in the chat, and they had a brutal passage from Hawaii to California. You should head over to their YouTube channels, like, subscribe, and watch their videos. I love those dudes. Someone said, how hard it would be to swap a diesel car engine into a boat? Anything that's not marinized, you put on a boat is going to last like 6 weeks. The seawater, even if it never comes in direct contact, everything on my boat rusts. Victoria was here for, how long were you here, Victoria? 3 weeks? And her purse, which was never directly exposed to anything, the buckle started rusting just from the salt in the air. So that's a reason marine parts cost so much. Like, it's not just a racket. It may also be a racket, but it's they have to be like stainless. Battle in the sun. Mark said even marinized stuff rust. Yeah, you know what they say, stainless just means it stains less. Oh, dang it. Are you positive the Yanmar 1 GM10 can't be repaired? I have a 2 GM20F Yanmar. I've had this engine for 9 years. I'm very intimately knowledgeable about this engine, specifically mine. It has been rebuilt 2.5 times that I know about, and no, it cannot be rebuilt because Yanmar 2 GM20s don't have sleeves, so you have to bore them out. There's no more meat to bore them out. In fact, my guess is there's a hole somewhere inside the engine block, which is what is allowing seawater to get into the pistons. And that's exactly what has happened again. And there has been no water intrusion aft or anything like that. So yes, the engine is toast. It cannot be rebuilt. Are you checking on getting sponsored by Highfield? I reached out to Highfield 2 different times and never heard back. So I know they sponsor tons of Australian channels, but I guess my accent is the wrong accent. I don't know. This damn sun keeps getting in my eyes. I apologize for jumping up all the time, but it is winning the battle against me as we speak. It's making me crazy. 574 people on board, 127 minutes in. 127. 1 hour, 27 minutes in. Someone said, do they salt the environment, damage your eyeglasses? Do you carry multiple pairs? These are like grocery store glasses. I buy them, boxes of them, cheaply because I sit on them. I step on them. They fall overboard. They're just like, I just need them for reading. I had like superhero vision until after my 40s. And by 42, I remember when I finally accepted that I had to get reading glasses. I was in the cockpit locker and I couldn't tell if a screw head was a Phillips or a flathead. And I was like, damn it. That's when I submitted and started getting readers. But the first readers I got my eyes tested. I got some like nice Warbley Parker $100 glasses. And like 2 weeks later, they were in the ocean. I was like, never again. James, tell us you have a fine new galley, man, or soon will. Yeah, I did a new countertop. My fridge is totally toasted. There's no built-in fridge anymore. It failed in Indonesia. I have like a really terrible Chinese 12-volt fridge that I have ratchet strapped to the berth. So I'll probably try to buy a better fridge with all the support, because this thing does my head in. It's like constantly hard restarting. But so now I have to have this little side fridge. But the galley I just did, it's not that fancy or interesting, but it's just a nice new clean countertop. But there might be one of the videos I'll have a little bit. I didn't document that whole process because there were so many projects that I was documenting, but there is some footage of it that'll be out in a video at some point. Someone said, how many amp hours is your bank? 640 amp hours of lithium, Dakota lithium. How many people saw the controversial Battleborn batteries video? Oh boy, howdy. If you have not seen it, go look it up. and then get rid of your Battleborns, buy some Dakota Lithiums. Welcome aboard. Someone said, I've seen on YouTube that Australia's border patrol very strict. Have you found that yourself? I had the most amazing experience with the officials, the border control officials in Australia. Both when I arrived, they were super nice, really chill, easy. You know, that being said, I followed all the rules. So I got rid of everything on the boat that I wasn't supposed to have. You can't even bring in flour and crazy stuff to Australia. So I had done my part. I had followed the rules. I had everything. They were super nice, really chill. I cleared out at Thursday Island. You anchor at a different island. They don't even come to the boat when you clear out at Thursday Island. I anchored at Horn Island. They were so nice, funny, chill. We were just chatting. I had really remarkable experiences with all of this sort of like government officials in Australia. They were super chill. The only problem I had in Australia was the marinas in Queensland are running like a racket with Australian insurance companies. And so they won't let any foreign boats stay in the marinas unless they get an additional Australian insurance policy. Now I had $11 million coverage. You're required to have $10 million coverage of insurance in Australia. I had $11 million coverage from 2 different carriers, and I wasn't allowed to stay in a marina for 2,000 miles up the Queensland coast. The only place I was allowed to stay was at Gladstone because the guy was a fan of my channel, and he was like, "Don't worry about it," and he let me stay there. But other than that, my only problems in Australia was with the crooked marinas in Queensland. Now in New South Wales, it wasn't the case. I stayed at the fanciest yacht clubs in Sydney Harbour, stayed at Newcastle. No problems in New South Wales. But once you get in Queensland, they're doing shady stuff over there. So that was my only beef, was with like marina stuff. And then the dude at the post office in Thursday Island was a nightmare. But other than that, like my interactions with the border force and everything, they were super chill, really nice, and I had no problems with them. Someone's talking about the Battleborn thing and said Parlay got their Battersome as well. Yeah, Colin told me all the down low on that whole thing, but I won't repeat his words because it was said in private. But all I gotta say is I'm glad I'm sponsored by Dakota, not Battleborn. Someone said, do you personally think a cutter rig is better over a sloop for blue water? Absolutely. I think a cutter rig is the superior format for sure, because you can have a smaller like storm sail to where you can just put out your staysail and sail when you need to shorten sail rather than reefing your headsail. So because reefing your headsail eventually will stretch out your sail and make for worse sail performance. And then in light airs, you can have both sails out. I think cutter rig for sure. The only bummer with the cutter rig is then you got to deal with running backstays, but small price to pay for the advantage of having like a ready to unfurl headsail that can work as your short and sail headsail. Someone said, I'm doing a 0 to hero sailing course here in Thailand next month. Any tips or advice? I don't know what that means, so I can't really speak on it. But learning to sail from people is always a good thing. Andy, sailing so late. When are you going to sail to Hawaii, bro? And please, when you sail to Hawaii, actually sail home. Unlike some other people who just sail their boats in Hawaii. Be a man. What else? Someone said, how long will it take to repower in Phuket? Depends on if the motor's here. The actual pulling out the engine and putting a new one in, depending on how much modification I have to do to the bearers, like the engine bearers in the engine bay, it should only take like a week or two. It's not difficult. You just, make sure the props lined up and get everything in order, but it shouldn't take that long once I have everything in place. And again, I might bring in some of my friends either from the US or from England to help me. And that would like double up the situation. Someone said, are you in Phuket now? Yes, I'm in Phuket. Someone said, were you ever in the US Navy, James? No. All my brothers served in the forces. My older brother was military intelligence before going to the NSA. My brother Scott was a radar specialist in airborne, and then my brother Colby was a Marine. My grandfather was a tail gunner in World War II. I've just been a hobo. Someone said, who is a YouTuber you'd like to eventually meet up with and why? The Indian dude who doesn't talk on his videos that does the sand cast making motorcycle parts. That's like my favorite stuff to watch. I love that. Andy. Yeah, I agree, Andy. And I think it's better to have a wind vane. Oh, I think you do have a wind vane. Didn't you buy Mark's old hydro vane? But I get it. I'm just messing with you, bro. As you've learned, sailing to Hawaii is the easy part. It's getting back. That's the hard part. What else? Someone says, seems like Panama would be too expensive, but your boat size could reasonably be trucked. I would never sail around the world to truck my boat across the land. That voids the entire circumnavigation. Any more questions? Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. This is fun. Someone says, I know you prefer hydro vane, but what is your experience with Cape Horn? I think Cape Horns are the most beautiful wind vanes. But like Eves was like really kind to me and sent me his like original drawings from the 70s so I could base when I custom built my mast. He sent me his drawings and I loosely based my rig on what he sent me. So I think those Cape Horn wind vanes are stunningly beautiful. But the problem with like nothing being visible on the outside and it being like a sexy look is that all those mechanics take up all of the space in your aft locker. So you lose a ton of stowage. And I just can't justify losing any stowage on a boat this small. Oh, Andy said, when am I getting a new engine? Victoria's in touch with the beta dealer here in Phuket, trying to find out when that can happen. And also we're getting a quote from Beta Marine Malaysia to see if they can get us one, because it'd be cheaper because it's duty free in Langkawi. And here you have to spend, it's like 40% duty on stuff. So we'll see what the forecast is on the engine. Someone said with the beta, you can get electric hybrid. You can only get the electric hybrid on betas, I think 30 and up. And I don't have room for that, but those are really cool. I think electric hybrid engines are the way to go because it gives you a redundancy. If something happens with your engine, even if it's something as simple as like, there's junk in your fuel tank, it clogs your fuel filter, you're coming into a rocky coast and trying to get into safe harbor, and then your engine dies because your fuel filter's clogged. You could switch on that electric if you have, battery bank, and like safely. I think diesel electric hybrid engines are so cool, but they usually only come in like the large size and too big for Triteia. Someone said, what do you think about Warham sailboats? I think Warhams are the only catamarans that I think are cool. I have no interest in catamarans, but Warhams are at least beautiful. They're interesting. They're based on Polynesian voyaging craft. Yeah, I think they're pretty neat. What size dinghy will fit on your boat? A 2.4 meter high field? Someone said, does the saltwater environment cause junk in your diesel fuel? No, what happens in the diesel fuel is it's called bug, and it's actually like kind of like an organism that feeds off of the diesel. If there's moisture, if moisture gets in there, it doesn't have to be salt water. It could be any moisture. So that's why you're supposed to keep your tanks really topped up, especially if you're leaving it for any time. But in the tropics, it's very difficult to battle diesel bug. It grows very quick. Someone said, what about the plastic dinghy? I was fortunate enough to get to sell Gary to an amazing sailor in Langkawi with a really cool boat that me and Victoria toured his boat and shot it. And that's going to be a little bonus episode coming out soon. That boat, the little plastic Gary boat, was way too dangerous in anything other than lake-like conditions because it could get swamped really easy. Even leaning back to start the outboard, I would be this far from the water and would take a bunch of water in if I pulled to start the outboard too quick. So in anything other completely dead calm conditions, it was really dangerous. I had the funniest experience in Borneo where the customs dudes, when I was forced to clear out of Indonesia early, they wanted me to carry 4 dudes from customs out in the middle of the river to Triteia. And all they did when they got on the boat was they came in, they turned on my AAS and looked at it, and then they took a photo of the badge on my engine bay. And they're like, okay, that's it. But they wanted me to bring 4 dudes. And I'm like, there's no way I can bring 4 people. So me and 2 dudes from customs, and they had like life jackets on. They were like terrified, white knuckle holding the rails. And we were like going across the river, almost getting swamped. And I was like, oh shit. It was super funny. Someone said, are you happy you get to chill for a few months? I haven't chilled I chilled when I was in California with Victoria, just editing videos, but there's no chilling for me right now. I have to push so hard with boat work, like brutal. So unfortunately, I don't get to chill until I get into the Indian Ocean. Somebody asked if the timeline for the engine is too slow, would you still consider the outboard route repowering in South Africa? Yes, absolutely. That is a consideration. And so many people were like, an outboard is dangerous. That is absurd. You can't do that. That is completely irresponsible. People sailed for centuries with no engine. And that's exactly what I'll treat it like if I have an outboard. It'll just to get in and out. Me and Victoria had this little outboard, which was like, didn't work real well for us, but we sailed 158 miles and we sailed the whole way. We sailed on and off of anchor. Like what it does is it means that you can't go to places. You have to choose where you go wisely, not put yourself in dangerous situations. But when I'm sailing across oceans, I don't ever run the engine, even when I'm becalmed. Like I bake bread, I read books, I take naps. I don't run the engine in the ocean. So for sure, it's definitely something to consideration. If it's a matter of getting stuck here for a year or sailing off with an outboard, I'll sail off with an outboard for sure. Someone said, how do you manage doing all this stuff and not being able to carry a workshop on board? It's really tricky. And a lot of my stowage space is spares. Like the majority of my stowage space is spares or tools. probably my most used tools: a battery-powered jigsaw, battery-powered oscillating multi-tool, and a Japanese hand pull saw. I use that pull saw a ton. Someone said, have you considered getting a transmitting type AIS thing? I've had AIS transponder since Australia because you have to have one to be in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. It cost me $1,000 to install. I didn't have the money, but I just kind of like had to do it. So I just, ate ramen for a minute when I installed it. But once I installed my transponder at my AIS, I have it's up here. It's like ICOM. I wish I had done it in Hawaii because it's like you can see like 36 miles. So with my old receiver, I could only see maybe 8 miles. So you can see really far out. People can see you, which is a novel concept. So yeah, I think AIS transponder is a great thing if you can afford it. Someone said, I bet the big ships appreciate running AIS. Big ships don't care. They don't ever move out of our way. They just like, well, we'll kill you if you get in our way. Someone said, are you going to upgrade a beefy transom mount as an emergency backup still or no? Not if I get the new Beta Marine and a new reliable dinghy, because then I can just put the dinghy on the hip if I need to. But we'll see. Someone said, how tall are you? I'm 6'4" and wonder how I could get around in that small boat. I'm like 3'4" tall. I'm like 5'5" or something. I'm fun sized. But as they say, dynamite comes in small packages. And it's much easier for me to get into lockers than big people, regular sized people. Someone said, how did you sell the Malacca Strait? Did you shoulder the shipping lanes? How does that work? Yeah, Malacca Strait, it's just day hops. You're just motoring. There's no sailing. It's all motoring. You kind of have to time it with the tides. Just do pushes. But the thing about the Malacca Strait is it's super shallow. There's not, if depending on when you go, I went on advice of other cruisers who had done it many times. I went the first week of August and they were like, that's the best time to go. I listened to their advice and I had a fantastic, easy passage up with like almost no weather. A bunch of my friends went later in the season and they had a bunch of really gnarly weather. So if you go at the right time, it's an easy kind of mundane 500-mile motor. What's the scariest ocean state you've sailed through? Sailing to New Zealand from Fiji, which I sailed with no engine because my engine failed in Fiji. I did that with no engine and it was brutal. Especially there, a lot of people stock up on tons of diesel where they do. Like that's a place where I would have actually motored because you're getting out of the trade winds and you're getting into the variables as you move further and further south. So you have these giant low pressure systems that just march through. And what happens is right before that, you have a calm before the storm. So you're just sitting adrift, watching this weather system barreling at you that's like packed with like 40, 45 knots of wind. I hit one system that wasn't even on any of the models at all. And it was 100 miles wide and it lasted for 24 hours and it was brutal. So that passage was like, and then crossing Cook Strait the first time, which is in the Roaring 40s. I suffered 2 knockdowns on that. One of the knockdowns, I was laying in the berth right here. And it was a slow knockdown, but we rolled over so far that this is my iPad for navigation. It changed its orientation to the vertical. That's how far over the boat got. So Cook Strait was a very serious bit of water, as it's known to be. Oh, is that Poetic Wizard? My little brother Scott's on here. What up, Scott? my 50th birthday in April. Had a fantastic time cruising with John Conway on SB Florian. He took myself, my little brother Scott, who's in the chat right now, my little brother Colby, and Victoria all out for my 50th. And we had an amazing time circumnavigating Santa Cruz Island, going in the Painted Cave. Remarkable time. Thanks so much, Scott, for coming out for my birthday. Oh, I'm going to cry. I love you, brother. Appreciate you coming out for that. It was awesome. Someone said, how does it feel when you step on solid ground after weeks of sailing? The only time I've really had trouble with that was the passage to Hawaii, which was 32 days. I was walking like a drunken sailor, like staggering everywhere. And I called Sarah, and I was walking to the Hard Rock Cafe after I got all tied up. And Captain Mike and them towed me in, helped me get tied up to this dock. And then I walked to the Hard Rock Cafe, and I was like staggering everywhere. And I was laughing on the phone with Sarah about how absurd it was. And then I got to the Hard Rock Cafe, and the dining room was upstairs, and I was like, oh shit. And so like I had to walk. It felt like a fun house. It felt like the steps were doing this, and I was like holding on. They're probably going to cut me off if I tried to order a drink. It was so funny. Someone said, can you get a full 8 hours sleep while sailing on an ocean, or is it too risky? I can't even get a full 8 hours sleep under anchor. No, you should not sleep 8 hours straight solo on the ocean. I sleep in 2 hour increments. My alarm goes off. I get up this is with AIS in the middle of the ocean, not coastal and not in really heavy traffic waters, but the middle of the Pacific. Every 2 hours, my alarm goes off. I get up, check the AIS, check my course, have a scan around, and then lay back down with my alarm set for another 2 hours. But a lot of times the boat wakes you up like when she needs something. If an alarm goes off, there's like a boat that's going to come within such a range, but you'll know way ahead of time with AIS. Someone said, how do you feel reflect on your arrival to Hawaii now? Like that whole thing, like a Greek tragedy, every aspect of that. My life changed forever after that. So there's kind of before that and after that is all really exists. But from the moment that I lost all steerage 1,000 miles from Hawaii, my brain kind of switched into sort of like survival mode. People are always like, oh, did you like freak out? I never freaked out. I instantly just went into like survival mode. And I don't think I came out of it for a long time. But the thing to like remember is like while I was going through that, I had also just like, you know, my wife had left me via text message like 3 weeks before that moment. So like my soul was crushed. She had like vanished from my life like a ghost with no explanation. And then I found myself stranded in the middle of the ocean with like either save myself or abandon my boat for it to be scuttled and lose I own nothing in the world other than what's on this boat. So that whole experience was just like brutal sort of Phoenix story, as in the Phoenix that like burns to the ashes and comes back out. That sort of scenario. I don't know if I'll ever be able to process that whole experience. I'm writing a book. I have like 20,000 words written on a book about that, and like where my head was and lots of details that no one else knows about what I was going through during that time. So, and again, similarly to what we were talking about earlier, like I left LA. I had spent 4 years refitting Triteia, paycheck to paycheck. I worked and invested in getting my master's license with U.S. Coast Guard. I thought that I was just going to like deliver boats for a living, or drive dive boats in places, work on boats. Like that's how I plan to pay for my circumnavigation. I didn't know that the YouTube channel was going to take off and make it so that I could make a living as a YouTuber. If I had tried to make that happen, it probably wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened. So when I left LA, I think I had $200 in my bank account and $500 in savings, and that was all the money I had to my name. But I just jumped off the cliff because I was like I just seen so many people keep saying they were going to go, and they just like, oh, as soon as I have enough money, and they never left. And some of the same people, I still see them not leaving, which is fine. You know, it's difficult. But for me, I was going to go at all costs. I was like, I can figure it out. I can do with almost nothing. So, and I have for the last 5 years. So, when I got to Hawaii, I thought we were going to have to ship Triteia back to California because Hawaii is so expensive, so that I could like go back to working a day job and figure out how to repair Triteia. But the passage video from that went viral instantly. And I think we had 1 million views in 2 months. Yeah, we had 1 million views in 2 months. And the money from the ad revenue from that made it possible for me to stay in Hawaii and get the repairs done to the rudder and everything. So it was like such a bizarre thing to go from that sort of like soul crushed, heart crushed, having to save myself in the middle of the ocean, to then like everything that happened with the video after that. It was such a bizarre sort of like, it's like throwing a car in reverse while you're doing like 70 miles an hour. It was so insane to sort of get my head around. And ever since that moment, like Sarah's always said, I had like severe imposter syndrome. Still, like, I don't think of my channel as being like a really big channel. That's why it was like really shocking to me, the outpouring of support that the GoFundMe had. I was like, because like if you look at my view numbers, like I have a lot of subscribers, like 162,000 or something crazy, but it doesn't, it's like, but then my videos only have like 20,000 views. And so that's the other funny thing, is the scale of it all. So like I say they only have 20,000 views. If you step back from that sort of like bizarre reality and think about 20,000 people sitting in a theater eating popcorn watching a video, that is like, whoa. But if you look at vast numbers, if you look at 163,000 people are subscribed, you're like, well, and I'm only getting like a small percentage of that are people actually watching on a regular basis. It's easy to like have a sort of perverted idea of like, oh, well, the channel doesn't do very well because my views, you know, aren't as like high as I would think they should be with that kind of subscriber count. And again, it's like I look like a hobo or an ex-con or something, and I'm sailing on a small boat, and there's like, I look terrible in a bikini, and you know, I'm not a partier. Like I'm like a grandma with tattoos that just likes to read books and like get excited about, you know, hermit crabs. So like I'm not everyone's cup of tea. So I understand why it's like not as big as like some of the top channels. But yeah, so for the GoFundMe to go completely off, I was like really surprised and obviously so humbled and grateful. And again, as I said earlier in detail at the beginning of this video, reading all the kind messages everyone said on YouTube and on Instagram and on GoFundMe, it's just like really, really humbling and so grateful. What else? Someone said, what's your go-to music genre? Like in my old age, I like jazz a lot, but like really jazz standards, not like intense, like high, not like cocaine jazz. I like Stan Getz. I like mellow things, non-narrative a lot. if I'm listening to like narrative music, Sturgill Simpson, I love a lot. Bon Iver, I love a lot. Death Cab for Cutie, big fan. I think that dude's one of the best. Lyrically speaking, I think Ben Gibbard's one of the like best songwriters of our time. Elliott Smith, but that can get real dark real quick. Actually hung out with him a few times right before he died. He lived down the street from me in Echo Park. But mostly like non-narrative, really kind of mellow stuff. Also, Sarah Satya sings. Sarah, post a link to your Bandcamp so everyone can go listen to your music. Oh, Coulter Wall, fantastic. Fantastic. Love it. Any more questions? Oh, we're at the 2-hour mark. I should probably wrap it up soon. I feel bad for keeping it. Well, we still got 573. I'm chill. I'm just here hanging. So I guess we can hang out for a while. I might have to. I'm going to eat a cupcake if y'all don't mind because I'm dying right now. Sarah, you posting your Bandcamp? I tell you what, I'm at this place called like Chalong Bay Beach, but it's like not near the pier. It's like a really protected. There's an insane footage of me and Victoria sailed in to Phuket so we could clear in January 3rd. And we sailed in and had a really gnarly night in a more exposed part by the pier because we thought we need to be close to the pier to clear in. It was hellish. And the next morning we woke up and there was a power cat that he either had like 400 feet of rope chain out or he drug anchor, but he was like within 60 feet of us. And the winds were blowing. I think after we got to sailing, the winds had to have been blowing over 20, 25 knots, but it was a little deceiving because it was protected from the hills. So the sea state was pretty mellow. So me and Victoria, I apologize. I have to eat. I'm starving. Me and Victoria sailed off anchor, Victoria on the helm the whole time. I was hauling up with the fancy new electric windlass, kind of giving her directions how I wanted her to sail off anchor. She's a super badass sailor, lifelong sailor. She's been sailing for 35 years. So we sailed off anchor in those conditions in a crowded anchorage, got out of safety, and then Victoria, do you remember how long it took us to sail 1.5 miles? We beat into the wind, lined ourselves up, and then sailed onto anchor to this spot. But we had 3 reefs in the main, less than 100% of the headsail out, and we were overpowered. So that tells you what the wind was. I haven't had a wind gauge since Hawaii. So, but like I said, it's easier for me to read the wind when the sea state is in harmony with the wind speed. But it was sort of like Venturi winds off of this hill. It was like we were screaming, but there's so much good footage. And I filmed us sailing off of anchor and then a little bit of us sailing over and then a really long video of us sailing onto the anchor. And there'll be an episode of all that, but I think I'm going to release the raw footage of the sailing off and on just as like a unedited, here's a big block of video for anyone who wants to watch the whole process. I think I'll release that as a sort of like a raw sort of video because it's like, it shows what it was really like and like what we had to do and how we communicated. And we communicate famously very well. And again, it helps that she's a super badass sailor. But this anchorage is heaven. There's like a really good restaurant on the beach here. Tons of other boats. There's like a really big open thing. There's a WhatsApp group for all the boats, for a lot of boats that are heading to South Africa route. So we had a meetup at the little restaurant on the beach here the other night, 25 of us. There's at least 12 boats that showed up to the meetup. There's 100 people in that group, 100. So we're all in touch, exchanging information, advice. Some of the people in the group have already left and reached Sri Lanka. Some people have already reached the Maldives. So they're giving us updated info about what they're experiencing this year as far as legal regulations and, you know, all that sort of stuff. Really cool community. So got to meet a lot of really badass long distance sailors, a couple solo sailors even. So this Anchorage has been really nice. Victoria said, I learned a ton doing it. That was the cool thing, is like, after we were all done, I asked Victoria, I was like, did you know that you could solo a 30-foot boat? And she's like, no. And so that's what's so cool. It's like, if you have a fair amount of sailing experience, just because you haven't done something doesn't mean you can't. Just means you haven't yet. Because she soloed Triteia, like, no problem. I was sitting on the bow, like, just like pointing in what direction I thought would be best for us to make our approach. Someone said, would love to know how useful radar is and whether it's worth it. I don't think you need radar unless you're cruising somewhere where there's a lot of fog. If there's a lot of fog, I think it's 1,000% a huge safety benefit. Either don't go out in fog or have a radar, but sometimes you're out and fog shows up. So if you're in a place where there's a ton of fog, I think it's 100% worth every cent. If you're not cruising places with fog, I don't think it's worth the money. What else? Make sure you guys pop over. Sarah posted her website in there. Go, if you like beautiful singer-songwriter music, go check out Sarah's music. It's in the chat. Someone said, do you ever get seasick? Yeah, I used to get seasick when I would look at boats when I first started. Now I'll feel off, but I've only thrown up once in the last like 4 years. And that's because I ate some really oily pasta and we were in really bad conditions and that made me sick. I threw up once and then I didn't throw up again. But generally time on the water helps you. Not everyone, but most people get over it. Would radar help avoiding squalls? You don't really avoid squalls. You just know they're coming. Someone said, what happened to the engine? What destroyed it? Water got into the cylinders again. My guess is that there must be some kind of crack in the engine block, or some kind of small hole from it being rebuilt 2.5 times. That there's some kind of compromise in the engine that's allowing water to get into them, because there was no following seas that happened. There was nothing like that. There was no condition where there should have been water siphoning. When I go to start the engine, even if it's having trouble, I turn off the valve so that it doesn't suck seawater up. Like, I know all the procedure, and it's still got seawater in, and there's zero compression on the aft cylinder, which is the same cylinder that failed last time. So someone asked me a sports ball question. I don't know anything about sports ball. Someone said, you're gonna have to rip up the deck to get the engine out. No, I put this engine in by myself, literally by myself. Pulled the old engine by myself, put the new one in by myself at the dock, took this one out, put it in. I just built a little gantry under the Dodger, use it, come along, fly it out, and Bob's your uncle. What else? I think we'll go about 20 more minutes and then I'll tap out. I'm going to start losing my voice. Somebody said, curious if you finally get a legit whisker pole, James. Yes, I am going to invest in a real whisker pole that isn't a paint extender pole. But here's a perfect example of all the dudes that talked down to me about my nylon rudder repair, which would have been perfectly fine. So many people told me I could, like I've said this in comments, I could do an hour-long episode of all the things that dudes mansplained to me that I was an idiot for trying and that it wasn't going to work, and everything that I did worked. So I made, when I was in Nelson, New Zealand, I couldn't find a whisker pole. I lost my whisker pole over this chaos that happened in Cook Strait. I couldn't find one anywhere for sale proper. I would have bought one proper then. I couldn't find it. They didn't have them. So I had to build one out of like an extender, like as a thing that you hook up a garden hose to clean the eaves of a house. But it was extendable. It was an aluminum pole that was double walled. So I was like, this thing will probably work. And I got proper stainless fittings. I riveted them on the end. That thing lasted me across the Tasman Sea and all the way up Australia. And I used it a ton. Like, it lasted over 3,000 miles. And it broke on like a hard snap of the jib. It broke sailing to Indonesia. But I had bought a paint extender pole in Thursday Island because I'd also looked for them in Australia and I couldn't find any. I bought a paint extender pole at a hardware store on Thursday Island as a backup in case that other one broke. Sure enough, that thing broke, took it down, drilled it out, put the fittings on. Boom, my paint extender pole still works just fine. But yeah, I am going to buy a proper whisker pole. If I can find one. I went to this used store the other day and he didn't have any. Yep, Scott said, we're always taught if you can't get the right tool, make do with what you got. That's right. Cowboy fix. Someone said, well, you replace your sails. Yeah, but that Raleigh Tasker was already going to supply me with all new sails. And they're going to make me the same sails that they supply all the OGR boats with. So really top of the line sailing fabric. We're adding a fourth reef. All that stuff's already in play. So yeah, Raleigh Tasker's doing all new mainsail, new headsail, and we might get a different spinnaker too. We'll wait and see. Someone said, what if any upgrades you want in the galley? The only upgrade I need in the galley is for me to be a better cook. See, Victoria's talking about our our jumping spider named Harriet. I have a couple of jumping spiders that are my friends that live on board. I love them. They make me happy. Someone asked if I could make Andy asked if I could make Triteia cutter rig. I have a Solent stay, so I could get them to make me storm sole. So technically, Triteia is a slutter rig. I have a Solent stay out of Dyneema that I can rig up. That can be used as a temporary emergency forestay if something happened to the head stay. Or you can hank on a sail. It has a dedicated halyard to it. But I currently don't have a storm headsail, so it just kind of sits as like an emergency backup. Someone said it looks hot. Any AC future plans? No, I would never put AC on a 30-foot boat. Somebody said, what's your opinion of Sam's cat? I'm happy that Sam and Annalene got the boat that they want to have. It looks like real fancy, like in videos. And then when I went aboard, it looks very homemade. I was like, oh, like it made sense. Cause I couldn't get my head around knowing Sam, how he went from like the boats he had to a fancy flashy catamaran. And then when I went aboard, I was like, oh, this is like proper weirdo homemade boat, not by Sam's hand, but before whoever made the boat. So I was like, oh, it makes sense that he would buy this boat. But I think they want to start doing like a charter business at some point to where they take clients on. So that's one of the reasons they got a bigger platform. I love Sam, and Annalene, his fiance, is super cool, really smart, amazing, and I had a nice time visiting with them. Someone says, "Why didn't you sail down to the southern sounds in New Zealand?" I ran out of time. That was all it was. I spent a year there and I saw as much as I could, but I just simply ran out of time. With the amount of time I knew it was going to take to get where I needed to be the next year, and even leaving in February, I still didn't make it out of Indonesia, so I still didn't have the time to make it out. So that's the reason I didn't go to the Fjordland and stuff and the bottom of New Zealand. But I always say you can't see it all. Someone said, "Can you actually sleep a full 2 hours each time?" Not every time. Sometimes the boat conditions don't allow you to sleep, but a lot of times I'm pretty good at sleeping through gnarly conditions. Ask Victoria about that. She had her first experience in a really terrible anchorage when we first got to Phuket. That poor girl, she can, and I don't remember what I said this on recently, but she's like one of those Christmas trees, the little mechanical ones, like when the music stops and it just stops moving. That girl can fall asleep, you just like at the snap of a finger. And when we were in this brutal anchorage when we got here, she did not sleep at all. She was so bummed. And I slept fairly well that night because I'm so used to being in really terrible anchorages. All right. Let's see here. 17. I'm going to close it up in 2 minutes. Any last questions? Any last questions? Someone said, "How long until you hit the Indian Ocean?" It's hard for me to know that answer, but anytime between like a month from now, um, like I would like to leave middle of March would be ideal. I think that's a realistic sort of timeline. End of February, middle to beginning to middle of March would be perfect. If things change, then it could be anywhere as late as June, but I'd prefer not to do June because I'll have to go way south if I do June. Um, Lots of still, I should say this now, lots of refit videos still coming up. Like that is not done yet. There's a new sunshade video coming out tomorrow. There's the Dakota lithium batteries video coming out. There is the bottom job coming out. A resort tour video. They gave me like 2 nights at the fancy resort, so I show you around the resort. There is the splash, getting back in the water, finding out that the engine was completely toasted, all that stuff is coming out. And then Victoria shows up in all of our adventure videos from when Victoria arrives until when she left. So there's tons and tons of like great content coming out that jumps back into the refit timeline. So thanks to everybody for coming out. Thank you beyond words for the support. I'm so humbled and speechless at the GoFundMe thing. It's just, it doesn't even feel like reality. So I'm very grateful for you, for the community. I'm grateful for people who are broke and can't contribute and just watch the videos. Thank you. I appreciate that. That helps. Thanks so much. Thank you, Victoria and Sarah and all my patrons. Very grateful. Hope you guys have enjoyed this live, and time for me to make some eggs and baked beans because I'm starving. Thanks, everyone. And I'll see you soon.